My dear friends, good day. France-England, it's a bit of a cat and dog story, huh? We had some peaks of rivalry, we'll say like the 100 Years' War or colonization. The English colonial empire was gigantic. Even today, the King of England has 15 autonomous kingdoms, but they are all members of a commercial alliance called the Commonwealth. So how did the English come to dominate the world? And above all, why did they found such a big state? The empire where the sun never sets, as we used to say. Today, I propose to understand the empire through a particular case, that of India. It is a republic today, but in the past, in 1877, Queen Victoria of England was proclaimed Empress of India. With 200 years of British presence in Delhi, there's a whole history to discover. With India, the British control an entire subcontinent with Pakistan and Bangladesh. They form an immense territory, the Raj, vast of more than 4 million square kilometers. It is the equivalent of the European Union, no less. At the beginning of the 18th century, these territories already represented a quarter of the world population. Moreover, it is estimated that at that time, under the reign of the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb, India produced 25% of the world's wealth, 10 times more than the France of Louis XIV. In addition, during conquests such as North America, Australia, or South Africa, the English faced populations reduced or decimated by epidemics from Europe. But this is not the case in India, which is infinitely rich and prosperous, highly populated, connected to the rest of the world, with efficient agriculture, great technical mastery, and advanced military technology. And then, most of the region is under the sway of large states, like the Mughal Empire at first, then later the Maratha Empire and the Kingdom of Mysore. Frankly, that England should colonize India, it just seems impossible. Besides, the question does not really arise since the British have no intention of taking over the country. But then, how did the little English Yorkshireman end up eating the Indian elephant? At first, it's a purely commercial affair. A merchant company, the East India Company, founded in London in 1600, decided to explore the country. A fierce multinational, it defends its interests by all means and mounts naval expeditions that import cotton and silk fabrics, spices, and anything of value. Once in India, the British merchants established trading posts and contacts in the coastal cities, and as early as 1610, they even had a representative at the court of the Mughal emperor, which means that they took the business very, very seriously. Throughout the 17th century, the company drives the Portuguese out of the Indian Ocean and seizes the strategic strongholds guarding the route to India: Bahrain in 1602, Hormuz in 1622, and Muscat in 1650. Meanwhile, Dutchmen do the same in Malacca, Colombo, and Kochi. The merchants of both nations concluded an agreement. The Dutch had a monopoly on the spices of Indonesia, and the English kept the Indian textiles for themselves. So for the moment, everything is going well for India, which has a crazy trade balance. The Europeans are snatching up its fabrics and paying astronomical amounts of cash. Textile factories are exploding. The economy is booming. The territory is getting richer. We are so happy to see the English merchants arrive that we welcome them. And then they want to settle permanently. And then we say, okay, that's fine. Then they're going to build coastal fortresses to protect the ports. That makes sense too. And then they'll put up garrisons. We'll let them do that. Anyway, the Mughal Empire, it has nothing to fear until it collapses. Weakened by wars of succession, the empire also faced rebellions. The Marathas, a people from western India, elected a king in 1674 and launched a long war of independence to control central India. Another threat, an external one, hangs over the empire. The Afsharian Empire of Nadir Shah, or Iran, then the Afghan kingdom of Ahmad Shah Durrani, invades the country several times, which weakens the central power even more. And finally, the Sikhs of the Punjab took the opportunity to become independent. During this time, thanks to European trade, several provinces become rich. They have princely dynasties, gold, an army. Finally, what good is the Great Mogul to them? Frankly, nothing. So the political landscape is changing dramatically. Some territories become very unstable, which will allow new powers to impose themselves. The Mughal Empire will weaken, while the Marathas rise. And this makes it much easier for the India Company to progress, which pursues an intense trade from its large fortified bases in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras. These merchants are not here to play politics. The only law is the law of money. So the company naturally forms alliances with the new independent local powers. All these links make it central, even unavoidable. And it has only two serious competitors, the Dutch, of course, but also the French, who have their own company founded in 1664 and also installed in fortified trading posts in Pondicherry, Chandernagore, or Karikal. Like the English, the French are there only for trade. But on the spot, the Governor-General Joseph-François Dupleix understands that the instability of the region compromises all that. More and more interventionist, he decides to militarize the colony. But beware, I'm talking about a rather soft competition. All these traders agreed to share the country. There's no way we're going to penalize trade with something as silly as war. But in 1740, the War of Austrian Succession was fought between France and England. Obviously, the European conflict invites itself in India. Taking advantage of local rivalries and relying on Indian troops, the French took Madras and the British besieged Pondicherry. General Dupleix then takes advantage of this to launch his famous interventionist policy, dominating almost all of the Deccan, the south of the peninsula. But this strategy is considered too adventurous. The board of directors, which presided over the company, decided to recall Dupleix to France. In 1753, the British regained the advantage, and in 1755, the two companies signed an agreement of neutrality that the British obviously intended to betray. Except that here, bang, it does not miss. The War of 7 Years bursts, new conflict between the English and the French. So don't worry, it's a bit complex as a period, but in order to understand it, I'll add a link for you to an episode that we did on this subject. Remember that in the end, the English definitively chased the French out of India with the help of local soldiers, the Sipahi. The French, on the other hand, supported the Prince of Bengal, Siraj al-Dawla, who seized Calcutta in 1756. But the company raised an army that recaptured the city and won a symbolic victory at the Battle of Plassey in June 1757. Free to move, the company annexed 3 districts of Bengal in 1760, then Chandernagore and Pondicherry. And as Bengal is plunged into a diplomatic crisis, the company will also play on this war, regularly changing sides. At the end, in 1765, it clearly dominates Bengal, from now on ruled by a puppet prince. Only 5 trading posts are returned to France. In the rest of the country, the English continue to advance with caution. Their situation remains extremely unstable, but little by little, they interfere in the affairs of the state, arbitrate conflicts and commercial privileges, and repel neighboring invasions. And here is a multinational private enterprise that has become a state. So that's a little bit, what the hell in itself. But on top of that, Bengal became a kind of colonial laboratory where strategies were tested and later applied to all of India. For example, annexation was abandoned in favor of the protectorate, a system in which the local lord was put under the tutelage but remained apparently obedient to the Mughal emperor. The company still raises taxes on the local population, but is otherwise content with a monopoly on opium, salt, and saltpeter, which are very lucrative. As a result, little by little, other princely states came under the company's protectorate. So much so that by the end of the 18th century, the British controlled all trade, founded banks there, and took part in conflicts between Indians, again to access new markets. But all this is not so simple. This masked empire, this colonization that doesn't bear its name, ends up provoking the distrust of neighboring powers. In 1780, the company was at war on 3 fronts. Against a vast peasant revolt in the north, but also against the Prince of Mysore, supported by the French in the south, and finally against the Marathas on different fronts. And all of this without any help from London. The situation is desperate. The English suffer one setback after another and are held in check by the Marathas and Mysore. But you have to understand that at the time, no Indian nationalist sentiment existed. England was not perceived as a colonizer, and the different states around never coalesced against it. In short, despite all this, with great difficulty and over a long period of time, the company pushed aside all its rivals one by one and secured its borders. It even launches military campaigns far to the east and west against the Burmese and Afghan kingdoms. In 1848, Governor-General Lord Dalhousie inaugurated the doctrine of forfeiture. Any princely state that was not under his protectorate, or that was without a successor, was automatically annexed. Yes, you have to understand, we no longer hesitate to privatize entire countries. This is starting to be a little too strong, huh? And inevitably, in 1856, it ends up exploding. The company makes a big mistake. The kingdom of Oudh falls into decay and is annexed. But you remember the Sipahi, the kind of foot soldiers who helped drive out the French? Well, they are now a big part of the company's army. And even though any Indian of any caste or religion can become a Sipahi, they are mostly originally from Oudh. This is the last straw, especially since a rumor was already circulating. The army would have provided rifle cartridges lubricated with pork or beef fat. The Sipahian infantry, mostly Muslim or Hindu, was absolutely horrified. Mutiny broke out in Calcutta and Meerut before spreading to the rest of the country. The insurgents march on Delhi to demand the support of the Mughal emperor. In reality, the emperor doesn't have much of a choice. He's hostage to the situation and civilians are already arming themselves throughout the Ganges Valley. But the idea is mainly to use a symbol that could rally many rebels. The British retreat to their well-fortified cities of Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay. But they are far from giving up. On the contrary, they then use incredible violence. Any suspicious Sipahi are executed. The houses are looted and the population is terrorized. The Indians answer to violence with violence. In Kanpur, 200 English women and children are massacred. Scandalized, the colonial troops took their revenge. Delhi fell on September 20th, 1857. The Mughal emperor was captured and exiled, and all his heirs were murdered. The company's soldiers rampage through the city and take back the south with the help of allied Indian princes. In November 1858, the Sipahi are definitively crushed. This is a milestone that has been crossed, and it is clearly a national war. As a result, the British government dissolved the East India Company and recovered all its possessions. In 1858, all of this became the Raj, the Kingdom of India of which Queen Victoria became the Empress in 1877. The annexations are stopped, and all the wars are stopped. 562 princely states are recognized. Half independent, they have their own administration, their own currency, and their own laws. But they are under the protection of the British Crown, which does not forget to reward generously the most faithful, those who helped during the Sipahian revolt. India is governed as before. The traditional local elites are favored. For example, the Brahmin caste, which is associated with power in the Hindu states. This indirect management allowed for the control of an immense territory with a very small English staff. Barely 1,800 colonial civil servants for the entire British Empire in 1874. It may seem a bit crazy that with so few people, the system was maintained until 1947, when the Republic of India declared its independence. Afterwards, it's not really surprising because if we take stock, all this colonization is full of paradoxes. Some historians, like John Seeley, even say that India was almost colonized inadvertently, almost unintentionally. But then again, when you build an army, in general, it's to use it. And indeed, at the beginning, there was no imperialist will. But one cannot deny that the empire ended up imposing itself. And at the same time, we also have a lot of locals who participate in the government and therefore in the colonization. So Gandhi, in order to win, will have to provoke civil disobedience. But it's another story, and we'll probably talk about it another time on the channel. So please subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you all for watching this episode. Thanks to Pacotte who wrote it. Don't hesitate to leave us a little comment below or to share the video around. See you soon on Nota Bene. Bye.